how we came to be happy again.
Hey, vinyl community, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and I've been doing a very dangerous thing lately. I've been thinking, dangerous. What have I been thinking? I've been thinking about a thread I would like to start. Have I got the vinyl community prowess to get a thread going? I doubt it, but maybe a few people will see this and decide they want to get in on it as well. We'll just have to see. But anyway, my idea was thinking, being a crate digger, uh, going to the thrift shops and searching the dollar bins at record stores, and always looking for a great record at a low cost. Uh, it's amazing how many records, high quality records, are really out there that are in the dollar bins at the record store that you can get for a quarter at a thrift shop, a charity thrift, or at a yard sale or something like that. So this will be, I'm going to show 10. You can show as many as you want if you want to do this. Show one if you want. But this would be, or show 20. But this would be albums that are out there in the wild that you should be able to get for next to nothing and get a really, really good album. You know, the prices people are paying for certain records are just outrageous. Uh, you know, old, you know, but it's always the same records, the same artists that command these extremely high prices. And sure, they're great artists, but they're just a drop in the bucket to all the great artists that produced music in the 60s and 70s during the prime of the vinyl world, uh, the heyday, I guess you'd say. So I'm going to show you just 10. This is not the top 10 or anything like that. This is just, I went through some boxes of records and the stacks here, and I said, okay, what are some things that I see all the time that I'm able to get for very low prices, and are really, really good, so that maybe that'll inspire you. You know, instead of spending $50 on this Pink Floyd album, you know, maybe you're better off buying $50 albums or something like that, or find a better price for that Pink Floyd album, $30, and then buy $20 records. We'll see. Anyway, of course, you want to avoid the ones that are in real bad shape. You want to find records in good shape. But a lot of what's in the dollar bins are there because they just have so many of them. They can't sell them all, or because you know they're just not, there's just not a demand there for them. So here goes. First one is, you see this album, Outlaws. This is a self-titled from the band Outlaws. Don't confuse this with the Waylon Willie, Jesse Coulter, Tom Paul Glaser compilation album called Wanted the Outlaws. This is a band out of Florida that was pretty darn big in the mid-70s into the 80s. And this is their self-titled first album. It's chock full of great cuts on here. This is a very good band. Now they're lumped into that Southern Rock title, which is it's not good. It's a marketing tool. Every band out of the South for a certain period of time got thrown into that Southern Rock label in order to try to sell more records. And unfortunately, they signed a lot of bands that sounded, you know, like, you know, minor league Leonard Skinner or something like that, and it got very monotonous very quick. But this is one of the bands that got they're on Arista Records, that got signed, and this is from 1975, and really put out some high quality stuff. Right off the bat, they had a hit with "There Goes Another Love Song." It's also got on here their own version of Knoxville Girl, not to be confused with the old Louvin Brothers song. It's one they wrote, and the jam song everybody loved, Green Grass and High Tides. They had several songwriters in the band, and they put out some really high quality music. But to wet your whistle with this, I see this album all the time. Pick this album up, The Outlaws. Okay. Another one I see all the time is this greatest hits album from America. Now, sometimes America gets some undue criticism, I believe. This was a really, really good acoustic harmony vocals band, rock band. And if you get the greatest hits, you're going to get Horse with No Name, which caused them to get called, Neil Young wannabes or something like that. I Need You, Sandman, Ventura Highway, Don't Cross the River, Only in Your Heart, Muskrat Love, Tin Man, Lonely People, Sister Golden Hair, Daisy Jane, and Woman Tonight. Every one of these is a really, really good song. And so if you don't have any America, you see this for $1 all the time. Pick this one up, listen to it. You may end up deciding you want to add to your America collection after that. Here's one I always have trouble saying her name, but this is a really good album, and you see it all the time for nothing. Maria Muldoon, Maria Muldoon. And this is the self-titled album, and she was kind of in the folk tradition out of the New York area, the northeastern area of New York, Boston, that area, offshoot of the folk revival movement. This is full of great players on this album. Richard Green, Bill Keith, both alumnus of Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys, are on here. Dr. John's on here. Chris Etheridge of Flying Burrito Brothers is on here. Ry Cooder's on here. Amos Garrett and David Grisman. Clarence White, the late great guitarist, is on here. And this is a really, really good folksy album in a very positive way. And it includes the big hit she had when I was a young kid, Midnight at the Oasis. Really good album, great musicianship on this, and just some really good music on there. Now here's one I fell in love with when it came out. Ooh, Carly Simon, isn't she beautiful? This is No Secrets, but besides being beautiful, this is an excellent, excellent album from Carly Simon. I highly recommend it. I would say this ought to be in your collection. Of course, the big hit that she had on here was You're So Vain. And but all the songs on here are good. There's one called The Carter Family, which is not about Mother Maybelle and AP, but a different Carter family. Some neighbors of theirs, I believe. The Right Thing to Do is on here. This is a really well constructed singer-songwriter album, typical of the 1970s. This is I highly recommend it. Carly had a steady stream of hits through the years. You see this album all the time for $1. Why? She sold a ton of those records. Okay? You see this album a lot, or at least I do, the Bill Monroe Country Music Hall of Fame. And of course, there's any number of Bill Monroe albums you can find. I see this one for nothing in a lot of record bins and stuff. Why? Because when he got inducted in the Country Music Hall of Fame, there was a little resurgence in interest, and this was a reissue of most of the stuff he recorded in the early 70s, and but they're all songs that have been in his repertoire for years and years, and some of them are the actual 1948 versions, 1955 versions, and things like that. But it's got just so many classics. It's got the Mule Skinner Blues, Kentucky Waltz, Get Up John, Blue Moon of Kentucky, The Girl in the Blue Velvet Band, Footprints in the Snow, The Gold Rush, and it features so many of the great artists who's who of fiddlers and banjoists, and of course he was the consummate mandolin player and great harmony vocals in much of it. But that's well worth. If you don't have any bluegrass and you see that album, well, let me get this for $1. You'll be very pleased. It is. Or you'll go, that's just not my thing. But hey, you've only spent $1, and you can say I've got a Bill Monroe album. Okay, another one. Generally speaking, Linda Ronstadt albums are available for next to nothing. All of them are good, but here's one you see an especially large amount of. This is, I believe, the first of her big band albums, Linda Ronstadt and the Nelson Riddle Orchestra. What's New? $1 every day. In fact, I think I got this for less than that. I probably got 3 or 4 copies of this album and the other big band ones that she did and most of her other things. You cannot beat the great Linda Ronstadt, the great vocalist, and she did everything from country to big band. And just, see this. Don't pay much for it because it's readily available for next to nothing. Get it. Very good. Okay. Debut albums, as debut albums go, you could not beat this one, and it is out there in the dollar bins all the time. Ricky Lee Jones. Now, for the younger crowd out there, I really highly recommend this. Dig into Ricky Lee Jones. She's still out there. She's still making music even today. But this debut album is just an amazing. It's totally different from anything else that came out. In what year was it? Like 78 maybe. I don't see it. Yeah, 79. Came out in 79. I was a sophomore in college. This album is just killer. Kind of a jazz vocalist, rock jazz crooner. I don't know what you'd call it. You tell me what you'd call Ricky Lee Jones on that album. Just a great album. The songwriting is just superb. And here's one you see often, Ricky Skaggs, Waiting for the Sun to Shine. This is his first major label release on Epic Records. And boy, let me tell you, he was hot at this time. You see this record all the time. He basically took a bunch of old 40s and 50s country songs and modernized them, just not by syruping them up, not by putting strings, orchestras on or anything like that, but just updated it a little bit and using the modern recording techniques, and just came up with a killer album. This is, he was a bluegrass musician, and he went and worked for Emmylou Harris in her hot band, and this is him kind of bridging the country, bluegrass, rock world with an emphasis on the country bluegrass, of course, but the rock was in there as well. He used to play, I went to see him a lot during this period in the early 80s, and he played an electric mandolin on stage. And so that's a really good album. Next, here's a rock album. You're going, let me see some rock, dude. Okay. Robin Trower, Bridge of Sighs. I highly recommend this album. You see this album all the time. You see his work, all his albums, all the time. But to me, this is the best of them. And, I hadn't listened to Robin Trower in a long time. I had this album when it first came out in the mid-70s. I hadn't listened to him in a long time, and I had it in my head that it was all instrumental. But when I played this album a couple years ago again, I said, man, I remember this. Let me listen to this. I played it. It's got vocals in it. He doesn't sing vocals. He has a vocalist in the group. But it doesn't take away from it at all. It's fine. But really, when I listen to it, I don't really even listen to the lyrics hardly. I'm listening to his guitar. Now, he's not a pyrotechnics guitarist. He's a great guitarist, electric rock guitarist. But he's very tasteful. And I think anybody that likes rock guitar would enjoy Robin Trower. He was in, what was the band? Not Humble Pie, not Quicksilver Messenger Service. What was the other one? Tell me down below. I know it's on the tip of my tongue, but for a couple albums he was with one of the major rock bands, and then left and went solo, and he probably did a dozen solo albums or something like that. Okay, and finally, this is the album. If you don't get anything else that I'm showing here, get this one. See it all the time for $1. Okay, Bobby Gentry, Ode to Billy Joe. This is one great album. Now, this is the mono version. I've got about 3 of these. This is the mono. I've got a couple of stereos as well. And what a great songwriter. Bobby Gentry, it's one of those paradoxes, I guess. Her early years grew up in, dirt poor in the Mississippi Delta. But by the time she was preteen, she was living in L.A. In very modern circumstances, and well educated and everything. And she was able to articulate her experiences in her childhood and maybe young teens. And I think she went back visiting a lot. But she was able to articulate that world through this music. This album was produced in a time when women did not produce records. She's a very strong-willed woman. Guess what? They had some guy sitting in the control room, and his title was producer. Push him aside. Sure, you're the producer. She ran the show. She ran the show. She produced this record, even though she does not get production credit for it. But this album is much more than just that great song, Ode to Billy Joe. But, that's my 10 or so records that you're going to find for $1 all day long. At least oftentimes you will. I'm sure it varies. Your mileage may vary depending on where you live. Certain albums are going to appear more often in certain places rather than some of the others, and vice versa. That Ricky Skaggs I see it all the time. But if you're in upstate New York, you might not ever see it hardly. Or up in Maine or Oregon or something, you may not see it. But some of them are universal, I think. That Bobby Gentry is pretty universal. Anyway, that's just a look at records that you ought to have. I highly recommend that you should be able to get. There's $10 worth of records right there. Okay, they're worth a lot more as far as enjoyment, but monetary value, that's $10 worth of records. So if anybody wants to jump in on this thread, I enjoy it. Comment below on anything you like about this video or any critique, and remember, be kind to your neighbors. We're all neighbors.
Again, back to the river again. It is a river of light. It is a river of light.
Good boy.
There